We are here to unveil the portrait of Senator Leatherman, who we all know, otherwise you wouldn't be here. We have a number of speakers today who will be talking about some of the things that we in the Senate don't always talk about, but nonetheless, if you don't know Hugh Leatherman and you're sitting in this audience, you don't speak maybe our language in South Carolina. We are glad that you are here, though, and certainly we welcome you all. First, we want to bring the Lord's blessing on this day, and we have our chaplain, Reverend Francis Burris, to come and do just that. And chaplain, again, I got the gavel. I'll use it on you if you pray too long, too.
This is a wonderful occasion. Let's begin with prayer. Gracious God, since the beginning of our country's history, certain people have distinguished themselves in the public domain. In fact, we are surrounded by portraits of many who have molded our very own South Carolina history. Senator Hugh Leatherman, whom we honor today, has for 36 years, through sheer determination, sacrificial work, and exceptional ability, shaped the course of our South Carolina Senate and our state. He is not here by accident. It is by your grace and your guiding hand that his good works have come to fruition. You, O God, have blessed him with a fine family, a loving wife, Jean, 6 children, 7 grandchildren, and recently a great-grandchild. So we pray today, well done, good and faithful servant and distinguished leader of our beloved Palmetto State. Through God's grace, we honor you this day. Amen.
A number of people here who my charge is also to introduce, and invariably the person doing what I'm about to do messes up. In advance, if I don't have your name and I don't call your name, doesn't mean you're not here. Governor McMaster. Well, let me get to you in a second. Let me move up here. There are a number of folks. We have statewide officers. I'll get to them in a second. Supreme Court folks as well. International dignitaries. We have the Counsel General Takashi Shinazuka. If you will raise your hand, please. We welcome you from Atlanta. He speaks South Carolina. Thank you for being here very much. Governor McMaster, Lieutenant Governor Kevin Bryant, Secretary of State Mark Hammond, Treasurer Curtis Loftus, Attorney General Alan Wilson, Comptroller General Richard Ekstrom, Superintendent of Education Molly Spearman, Commissioner of Agriculture Hugh Weathers, Adjutant General Robert Livingston. And again, if I haven't called your name and you are here, make sure he knows that you're here later. If you're not here, you better do some explaining later. Members of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Beatty, Justice Kittredge, Justice Hearn, Justice Few. I see retired Chief Justice Placonis in the audience as well. Speaker Lucas and members of the South Carolina House, and also a large contingency of Florence County officials we would also like to welcome. If you're a Florence County official, I'm going to ask you to stand up and be recognized along with the others. And they don't have good seats like we do. There they are. There they are. There they are. And then, most importantly, the family. And I won't ask y'all to stand, but this is a long, rich family lineage right here to both of you. Sheila Hardy and her husband John, their child and grandsons John and Keith Kenrick. Dr. Ken Leatherman and his wife Sue, grandson Hugh Leatherman III, and Kate, with great-grandson Hugh Leatherman IV. Alice Ann Leatherman could not be here. Karen Leatherman, Robin Parker, Lynn Leatherman, Rita Corcoran, Amy Smith and her husband Merritt, Dr. Sarah Allen and her husband Dr. Keels Allen, granddaughters Ada, Catherine, and Macaulay. Louise and Mary Keels likewise could not join us today. Hugh's sister Jewel Eggleston and Max, niece Tracy, and Hugh's sister Jeanette and her husband Dick. Likewise, we welcome each of you. The next order of business is for the speakers, and in your program you will see Senator Yancey McGill. How about that? Right here in the front row. Welcome. He's here, and I called his name. How about that? We have, and again, your program lists the speakers, some of whom I know and some of whom I know what they're going to say. I can assure you there will be no humor. Nikki? No humor. That was a solemn oath that there would be no humor today, that this would be a very somber event. Nikki Setzler is going to mess that up. Rather than me getting up and introducing each of these and breaking up the flow, it makes no sense to do that. You see who they are. But obviously, let me just kind of reel off a few things about each one of them, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nikki, and then the speakers will follow in order as they arrive. Nikki Setzler has the distinction of being above and in front of Hugh Leatherman with the number 1 as the most senior member of the Senate. And he is the only member to have served longer than Senator Leatherman. Next will be Senator Alexander, and he is one of Senator Leatherman's closest friends in the chamber, and they were both mentees of Senator J. Vernon Smith for your upstate folks. Chief Justice Jean Toal, I'm not sure if she's going to be here. She is not presently on the dais, but judges don't need excuses to be late, but I can't wait to hear hers if we do. Judge Michael Luttig from Boeing. You heard me in the Senate not long ago talk about the character and the skills that Senator Leatherman has in terms of the negotiation on behalf of South Carolina. I don't know, Judge, that we're going to hear about the particular arm twisting, but I sure hope you will give us a little color into that, and how, in fact, the Boeing deal was negotiated with a handshake, and that trust that when we were put to task and we were asked not to send one emissary, but to let Hugh Leatherman do the negotiations, this guy, the judge, is who will bear witness to that. The other little aside note here, which is kind of cute, I think, and we all are technologically challenged, some more than others, but not Senator Leatherman, because if you've got an email or text from him late or early, the fellow to blame for the skills that Senator Leatherman has in doing that lies with the judge. He's the guy that helped and taught him, and in fact, some of the negotiations occurred and were confirmed by BlackBerry while Senator Leatherman was in Japan. So again, in this day when those are not good moves to take and might get you into trouble with presidential elections, it worked back then. We had a real secure line. So anyway, and then finally, a local friend of Senator Leatherman's and a friend of mine as well, Hood Temple from Florence, who will give a little bit of local flavor as well. We all know the effect here, the influence here, and the color from beyond in terms of the international acclaim. Hood will give us some hometown color as well. Finally, President McConnell, our former Senator, President Pro Tem Glenn McConnell, will give some Senate commentary, perhaps, on his service and time with Senator Leatherman. At this time, I'll turn it over to Senator Nikki Setzler.
Thank you very much, Senator Rankin, and thank you to Senator Leatherman for asking me to participate in this unveiling today and be here and honor him as the President Pro Tempore of the Senate. As our leader, I think he is the 7th Pro Tempore of the Senate that I've had the privilege of working with and working under. Although I don't want you to be under any disillusionment today, Senator Leatherman. We're going to honor you, but you know, part of honoring is being roasted too. So contrary to what Senator Rankin thinks, we're also going to talk about you a little bit at some point before the day's over. You know, I've had the privilege of being here, and I had been here one term when Senator Leatherman came in with Senator Peeler in 1980. So I knew Senator Leatherman as a freshman member of this body, which many of you did not. Most of you who now serve, or none of you did other than me. And like all of us, when I came in, there were 14 you freshmen, and there were the Young Turks and the Renegades, and Senator Leatherman was one of those at that time when he came in, like the back row that came in this year and the back row that came in 4 years ago. You're always going to change the world, and that's the way the system is supposed to be. But people don't see Senator Leatherman as a renegade or as a Young Turk today. They see him in a different light because he is our leader. I remember Senator Leatherman when he ran for governor of South Carolina as a Democrat before he switched parties. I remember Senator Leatherman as the Republican who led the takeover by the Republicans of the South Carolina Senate in 2000. Probably the biggest revolution in politics in South Carolina in the last 100 years. And Senator Leatherman, if it hadn't been for you, I might be here today myself as the longest serving member. But there is a lesson in that. There is a lesson in that, because Senator Leatherman and I work very closely together. And the lesson in that, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, is that it's the people of South Carolina that are important, and not us individually or what we are here. I've known and served with Senator Leatherman as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. I've known and served with him as our President Pro Tempore. And most importantly, I've known Senator Leatherman and served with him as a bipartisan leader of the South Carolina Senate. And that is a tremendous trait that he has, and one which benefits all of South Carolina. I hope when we unveil his portrait today, and I can imagine what it is, and I have not seen it, but for those of us who serve with him, I can really imagine that it is a portrait of Senator Leatherman standing on the floor between two members of the Senate as he puts his arms around them. Because all of us who know and serve with him know if he comes with that arm to go around you, you're going to be ducking and moving because you know you're getting ready to be told no, and whatever you want is dead as doornails. The other thing that's famous on this floor about Senator Leatherman is if you walk up to him and say, Senator, I believe you're wrong on this issue, or I don't believe you got the votes to do this, or we need to do this amendment, and he just looks at you and says, whatever, you can bet the train's already left the station, you're getting ready to get rolled in the next 15 minutes, it's over with. So I've worked with Senator Leatherman as the leader of the South Carolina Senate on a broad range of issues, and got to know him and look at his traits. And I can see in his leadership in the Senate how his leadership was formed when he grew up on a farm in North Carolina. Think about that. Farmers are tough. They are really tough. Senator Leatherman is really tough when he wants to be. Farmers have a tremendous work ethic. Senator Leatherman has a tremendous work ethic, and I believe he can outwork still any member of this body. And farmers have to anticipate, whether it's the weather, whether it's a hurricane, a national disaster, whatever it may be, they have to plan ahead. And I can tell you, as our president pro tempore, Hugh Leatherman is 10 steps ahead of everybody in this body every day as we operate. And the other thing is, if a farmer is your friend, they are your friend. And if you are in a fight in the Senate and you're in a foxhole, the person you want in that foxhole beside you is Hugh Leatherman. He and I have what many people don't know, a love-hate relationship in some regards. Some days we get along real well, other days we disagree, and most of that's behind closed doors, because I am very honest with him about what I think and believe is best for South Carolina. And to his credit, he does not get offended when you tell him directly what you think about an issue or what you think about what he's getting ready to do. His staff will kill me for telling this because they don't think that we know it, but they call us Thelma and Louise. That's what they refer us to us as. Thelma and Louise are always fighting and talking and making up. And if you remember that movie, Thelma and Louise, one of the famous lines is, "You get what you settle for." Senator Leatherman wants to settle for nothing less than excellence. He and I have developed that respect and that honesty with each other. But Senator Leatherman, I got to tell you, as your friend and being honest with you, I really am disappointed in you, because I thought I knew you pretty well. I thought we'd shared most everything. And then all of a sudden I realized that there are members of this Senate who you take and ride around in your car. And you say, well, what's important about that? The good senator listens to Elvis Presley music and sings it while he rides around in his car. And the other week I came in the chamber and I saw him over there and I wheeled around. I said, wait a minute, Gene's done got him a new hairdo. There's something going on here. He got a new hairdo. Couldn't figure it out. And then I finally realized today as I was preparing for that, Senator, you're trying to get your hair totally black so you can sing like Elvis and sing Blue Suede Shoes or Jailhouse Rock. Can y'all imagine that? Just picture that. You know, Hugh Leatherman is a person of compassion. He's a person who loves Florence County and the people who elect him. He loves this Senate, and he has respect for the rules and the procedures and the customs of the South Carolina Senate. But more importantly, he loves his family and his wife, Jean. Jean is his rock. She is his partner. She is his confidant. And like most of us who in public service, our spouses, she is his major campaigner and the reason we serve in this body. And Jean, we thank you for sharing Hugh Leatherman with us. As minority leader, I've worked with Hugh Leatherman on many issues. As I said, he's tough, but he's caring, he's compassionate. He has an extremely broad depth and understanding of finances of state government, of the operation of state agencies, and the interlocking relationships between them. He is willing to listen to each and every member of this Senate, even when they adamantly disagree with where he is. He cares about all South Carolinians, not just the ones who elect him, but he cares about every South Carolinian wherever they live in this great state. He works on a bipartisan basis every day with us, and he respects the minority view, not the minority party. He respects the minority view on issues, which is important to a democracy that we live in. Hugh Leatherman's legacy will be economic development. There is no question in anybody's mind about that and what role he has played. Everybody knows his role in Boeing and bringing Boeing to South Carolina. We know his role in bringing Honda here. We know his role in our individual districts in helping us, whether it be Amazon and Yeffron in Lexington County or in your particular district. I'm not sure people understand the depth of his involvement in bringing Volvo to South Carolina. But Hugh Leatherman is not just about economic development. He has supported and worked with this Senate as a whole on supporting the African American Museum. He has supported and worked with this Senate on restructuring and revitalizing South Carolina State. He has supported and worked with this Senate on Read to Succeed, 4-year-old kindergarten. He helped Senator Vern Smith expand Medicaid in the early days when Senator Smith was here. And he has protected the integrity of the procurement system in South Carolina. Hugh Leatherman, you have been a good President pro tempore of this Senate. We appreciate you and your friendship. You know how to get things accomplished in this Senate and on the benefit of South Carolina. But you also understand, and we respect you for the fact that you understand it takes all 46 of us working together to deal with all of the people of South Carolina, not just special ones. God bless you.
Well, it is indeed a great privilege today to be here and to be a part of this, Mr. Chairman. Senator from Florence is a great, wonderful friend, and I appreciate your service to our state. Today, as we were in session a little bit earlier, I couldn't help but look around these walls and look over to this wall, and it was mentioned earlier about the senator from Greer, Senator Smith, and what a special friendship bond the two of you had. And what a mentor he was to you and to me, and I had the privilege on numerous occasions to sit and to listen. And I found that very helpful and very educational. The stories, and many I can't tell today, but one that I wanted to share that I think summarizes the type of effective leader that the senator is. Back when Senator Smith was chairing the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee, and the senator from Florence could be full of a lot of questions. And he was questioning this specific bill. And as the senator from Greer could get, he got a little bit frustrated and thought it was time to move on, and finally turned to the senator from Florence and said, "That's enough of those questions, and that bill is going to be passed out of this committee today." And the senator said, "I understand," and that bill was passed out of committee. Well, it wasn't but a couple of days later here on the floor, Senator Leatherman went up to Senator Smith and said, "I know you've looked at this bill. You've studied it very diligently. But there's a definition over here that's talking about a fee that's going to be placed, and it talks about these hydraulic lifts like you have in these repair shops. And I know you're in the tire business, and I don't know whether you have any of those hydraulic lifts or not." And he looked, "You mean they're going to put a fee on every one of those things?" That was the end of that bill. So that took care of that. So this shows you the type of leader. He has a way of leading and making sure that he is effective in the work that he does. I can't say enough about how much I appreciate the opportunity to serve and work with the senator from Florence. I'm reminded of Isaiah 57:14 that I think says to me what the senator from Florence is, where it says, and quote, he said, build it up, prepare the way, remove every obstacle from my people's way." It struck me when it talked about build it up. The senator from Lexington talked about the chairman's growing up on a farm, but he didn't talk about his college degree in engineering. I think about the chairman has always been a builder of homes, a builder of buildings, a building of relationships, friendships. I would even suggest a building of budgets. Those things don't just happen. It takes a lot of work. And then I think about preparing the way. It was mentioned earlier, his work and commitment to K through 12 education. The technical college system, higher education. The chairman's been involved in workforce development, preparing a better way for the citizens of South Carolina, especially those that have lost their job and need to be retrained to have the ability to have a better way of life for them and their families as well. And I'll take a different twist, too, on economic development, preparing the way. He prepares the way from the mountains where I live all the way to the coast. I've watched him work on the port expansion and the dredging and the deepening of the port with the realization that there's more product that is shipped and delivered through that port to the upstate of South Carolina than any other region of this great state of South Carolina. That statewide perspective of wanting all of us to prosper, that is the type of leader that the senator from Florence, our president pro tem, is. And then this verse says, remove every obstacle from the people's way. And I thought about that because of his involvement in the area of health care and health policy for this state. Those, the least of these, and the senior citizens, to make sure that the proper programs are there. I've seen him dedication to serving the special need population, the mental health programs in this state, his commitment and dedication of removing obstacles so that people could do the best that they could do, to help make sure that there is health care for the underserved and underserved. So today it's a very special day for me to be a part of this, but I would submit to you it's a very special day for the state of South Carolina and this Senate and its members to have the ability to honor such a statesman as Hugh Leatherman, a man that has dedicated his life to public service, starting back on City Council in Quinby, a dedication of making South Carolina better for his district and for the state, to see and to talk about the love of his family on the occasions when we have the opportunity to visit, and the love that he has for his God and his faith. A great example of what a true public servant truly is. I would say that the members and the residents of your district in Florence County are very blessed to have you represent them here in this state Senate. So is that scripture in Isaiah 57:14. Build it up. Build it up. Prepare the way. Remove all of the obstacles from my people's way. Senator, you are a shining example of that scripture, and I thank you for your friendship, your dedication, and your commitment to this Senate, to your district, to your family, and to the people of South Carolina. May God continue richly bless you in your service in the future. Thank you.
Governor McMaster, what a joy it is to say those words. Governor Bryant, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, members of the House, Mr. President pro tempore, Ms. Jean, friends of Hugh Leatherman. Mr. President, what a grand honor you do me to allow me to represent my beloved House of Representatives and the courts of South Carolina and your many friends. Not in a valedictory, because you've got a lot of good miles left and a lot of things to accomplish for this great state of South Carolina that you love so much, but an opportunity for me to share a few reflections about the life of a man I admire so much and whose wise counsel has helped me so much along the way. Hugh came to the Senate as I had just begun my 4th term as a member of the House of Representatives. And we House members turn over so frequently, not like you senators, y'all stay forever, that I was already fairly senior by the time that 4th term began. Senator Leatherman quickly established himself as someone whose voice was heard all out of proportion to his seniority in the body. I knew Hugh Leatherman because of my father's great admiration for him. My papa was an electrical and mechanical engineer by training and a sand miner by occupation. And he knew this great civil engineer and great construction man well in many endeavors in trying to build roads and bridges and other construction in South Carolina. And he said, "Gene, this is someone to listen to and to associate with. He'll do great things, and you can help him over in the house. You get right over there and say hello and greet him first thing," which of course I did. Many of you may not remember that Hugh, at one point in his illustrious career, offered his services as governor of South Carolina. And my father was one of his biggest supporters. And that would have been a wonderful piece of leadership contribution to the state of South Carolina. But the Lord has a way of putting his hand on his servants. And he had other plans for this man, plans that involved a long career of legislative leadership. Yes, South Carolina is proudly called by V.O. Key and many other historians as the legislative state. And we don't apologize for that. Our rather parliamentary approach to government in South Carolina is deeply rooted in our colonial roots when, as a colony, we had some hesitancy about the executive branch of government. That's changed tremendously, and now the three branches are much more a partnership. But we retain an extra special confidence as South Carolinians in the leadership of the legislature of South Carolina in moving a state with lots of challenges forward in a decent way. I don't think there's much progress that has been made since the 1980s that does not bear the mark of Hugh Leatherman. And whether it's some of the things we collaborated on in the area of procurement reform for South Carolina, construction reform, ethics legislation, public service commission reform, so many things that Hugh was deeply involved in early on. Many of these pieces of legislation bear his mark and his wide counsel, and not in a way that emphasizes I've got to be the one that is known as the father of this bill, but rather the man who works in the trenches and does the unlovely work that has to be done of really studying issues deeply and trying to figure out how in a collaborative way to bring policymakers together to fashion not what is one person's solution to the problems that face the state, but solutions upon which many can agree. That's been the hallmark of Hugh Leatherman's service. In recent years, your leadership has again been one of reaching out and collaboration, and we need that desperately in all walks of life. It's a collaboration that's not based on politics. It's based on deep-seated religious values and personal values as to what a just society should look like. And I know I'm preaching to the choir when I look out at the many principled members of the General Assembly whose faces are all over this chamber today, House and Senate. I'm proud to stand among you as someone who at one time in her career was able to serve in these halls and try in a decent and principled way to move forward, to navigate the roads of different points of view and come together with solutions that are not fading or temporary solutions, but long-term, deeply thought solutions to the many problems that face us. That's Hugh Leatherman. So I'll just end with this observation, and again, it's not a valedictory, because Hugh's got a lot more contribution he's going to make to this state. But it's lands composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey, William Wordsworth said this, and it rings so true to me, Hugh, about you and your career. Wordsworth wrote, "For I have learned to look on life not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes that still sad music of humanity, nor harsh nor grating, but with ample power to chasten and subdue." Hugh Leatherman has heard that still sad music of humanity, not in these great dignified halls, but in the smallest, forgotten communities in South Carolina, where he labors in the vineyard, not for just the great and the powerful, but for all South Carolinians. We owe you a great debt, and through the genius of one of the finest portraitists in America, John Seibels Walker, we will have a living memorial among the portraits of some of the greatest to ever serve South Carolina, and that is a memorial to the life and leadership of Hugh Leatherman. God bless, and thanks so much for giving me the honor of participating with these glittering array of wonderful, wonderful supporters and believers in you, Hugh. God bless.
Honorable Senators of South Carolina, other members of the General Assembly, Governor McMaster, Lieutenant Governor Bryant, former Lieutenant Governor and Senate Pro Tem McConnell, distinguished guests, friends, and family of Senator Leatherman, and of course, not least, Mr. President Pro Tempore, Mr. Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, Mr. Senator Hugh Leatherman from the 31st District of South Carolina. Thank you all. It is high honor for me to join in this celebration of the accomplished life and career of one of the most respected and admired public servants in South Carolina history. I told our friend I wouldn't miss this day for all the world, and that it would be a privilege to play a part in this fitting ceremony of this distinguished and humble man's service to his beloved Palmetto State. Senator, you have honored the great state of South Carolina every single day of your public life for the past half century. It may be only for today, but for this one day, your legislative colleagues and the citizens of South Carolina command the gavel. And they have decided, yes, without so much as consulting you, as unimaginable as that may be, that the important business of this chamber, of this State House, and indeed of this entire state today is to grace and honor you for all of the many years that you have graced and honored your state of South Carolina and her citizens. It is a personal privilege to be here today with all of you. And of course, my dear friends, Senator Leatherman and his beautiful wife, Jean, and the entire Leatherman family. As well, I'm honored to be here among so many friends of the Boeing Company, including all of you who have the privilege of working in this historic State House representing the remarkable people of South Carolina. The Boeing Company could never thank you enough for all that you have done for our corporate family over the last 7+ years. The already fast friendship between South Carolina and Boeing has only begun, and it will endure forever. The Boeing Company will always be indebted to the state of South Carolina and to the General Assembly of this state. And I will never pass up an opportunity once again to say thank you to each and every one of you. I will begin my comments on our honoree by repeating again today what I have had occasion to say numerous times before. In Senator Hugh Leatherman, the people of South Carolina could have no better representative and no finer public servant. And I can assure you the Boeing Company knows no closer and no more trusted friend. Without the man we honor today, the Boeing Company would not be in South Carolina. I am told that many in the Palmetto State know you, Senator, as the senator from Boeing. If that be so, my friend, as we say in the South, that's just fine by us. We are here as a direct result of your lifelong and passionate commitment to economic development, to investment, and to job creation and growth in this state. We are here as a beneficiary of your singular commitment to bettering the lives of all South Carolinians and the lives of their children and their children's children. We will forever be grateful, Mr. President. So it is that today is an historic celebration honoring an eminently worthy man whose only aspiration and whose only purpose throughout his decorated and selfless life of public service has been to serve his beloved state of South Carolina, to ensure with every fiber of his being that every South Carolinian man, woman, and child enjoys all of the opportunities and more that this great nation offers to her citizens and to those who are invited to share in her abundance. A man whom the people of South Carolina have solemnly entrusted with their own futures and the futures of their state for nearly 50 years now, and still running, I might add. From the time that he was elected to the Quinby Town Council until today, where he presides by choice of his colleagues over both this august body that is the Senate of South Carolina and the powerful Finance Committee of this esteemed upper house. A man whose firm, steady-handed contributions to this state's fiscal strength and stability, to economic development, to job creation and growth, to infrastructure expansion and maintenance, to education, to access to education and educational opportunities, and to vocational and job training for South Carolinians, perhaps have no rival in Palmetto State history. A man who has all but single-handedly fathered unprecedented economic growth in this state through his visionary architecture of public policy, all in fulfillment of his personal pledge to those he serves to better the lives of all South Carolinians, from the upstate Blue Ridge down through his beloved PD and across to our beautiful beaches and thriving ports in the Lowcountry. A man who does not simply understand, but actually believes in his heart the twin principles of democratic representation that many politicians do not even understand. That he possesses no power, except that the people have entrusted to him and with him, and that he works for the people, not the people for him. Senator Hugh Leatherman, the outsized and indelible mark that you have and yet have to leave on South Carolina will deservedly be celebrated by and for generations to come. Senator Leatherman has long admired and respected the Honorable Vern Smith, the late senator from Greer. They broke bread together nearly every night during session over the 8 years that they served together in the General Assembly. Senator Smith, as is our honoree this afternoon, was an institution, advocating for the poor, for the vulnerable, and for those in need of support, need of health care, and need of education. He, like our own honoree, tirelessly worked for the citizens of South Carolina so that they would have, in a word, the opportunity that freedom and democracy in a nation of abundance can offer her citizenry. When the great Senator from Greer retired in 2006, Senator Leatherman voiced what was on the minds of many at the time, that the state of South Carolina had lost a very big man, and that the shoes he left to be filled were very big indeed, and may never again be filled. Senator, you and we may be certain in the knowledge that your dear friend Vern Smith is smiling down on you this moment, every bit as proud of you as you were of him, and as we are of you, for the legacy that you have built and the legacy of his that you have continued to build upon, for and on behalf of the people of South Carolina. Senator, you wondered aloud whether anyone could ever fill the shoes of your friend, Senator Vern Smith. You need wonder no longer. You have filled those very big shoes, Senator Hugh Leatherman, and then some. The walls of this State House are adorned with the portraits of many of the legends of public service to this state, the likes of South Carolina's John Rutledge, Mary McLeod Bethune, Mary Gordon Ellis, Woodrow Wilson, James F. Burns, I. De Quincy Newman, incomparably revered South Carolinian statesmen and stateswomen. Today, these giant figures of our state's history are assuredly pleased, Mr. Chairman, that your portrait, created by the masterful hand of the portrait genius John Seibels Walker, will now hang forever and deservedly among theirs. You bring honor even to these, my friend. Senator, all of us gathered here today are proud of you and appreciative beyond words for your 50 years of undivided devotion and unparalleled service to your beloved South Carolina. And we have come bearing the pride and the appreciation of the entire state. Though it scarcely seems enough, let it suffice for at least this moment that we resolve thus to say thank you, Senator Hugh K. Leatherman, Sr., distinguished leader, venerable and venerated statesman, honorable representative of the people, and humble public servant of the citizens of South Carolina. The people of South Carolina will be forever grateful.
Good afternoon. Senator Leatherman, Leatherman family, Mr. Clerk, honorable legislators, and special guest. I am truly honored to be here with you today for this historic celebration. Senator Leatherman, as I said, today we celebrate your service to the state of South Carolina, the Leatherman family, and all of your friends, family, and supporters who have traveled this journey with you. This is truly a celebration for all of us. And while I stand here alone, I am confident that my remarks reflect the feelings of the entire Leatherman team. I want to thank and recognize our extraordinary team of friends and supporters who have not only made this historic event possible today through their generous support, but have been loyal throughout the years. At the heart of that group are two men who have been fiercely devoted, supportive, and unconditionally loyal to you. Sherwin Welch, your lifelong friend, and Dr. Fred Carter, president of Francis Marion Universities, whose contribution to Florence and the state of South Carolina are immeasurable. And I'm very appreciative that these gentlemen have graciously stepped aside to allow me to have this opportunity today. And as was said before, it's very important to say that I would also like to give my sincere thanks to our First Lady, Jean Leatherman, who continues to serve this state with honor and with grace. And we thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, 36 years ago, I attended Palmetto Boys State. And at the conclusion of the week, the Honorable Gene Moorhead read an inspirational poem which has stayed with me today. And I think Senator Alexander probably was thinking of the same poem as he gave his remarks. And when you asked me to give remarks for this ceremony, I immediately thought how appropriate this poem would be. It is absolutely a poem that has changed my life and reminds me of you every day. I would like to share with you The Bridge Builder by the poet Will Allen Dromgoole. An old man going a lone highway came in the evening, cold and gray, to a chasm vast, both deep and wide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The swollen stream was as naught to him. But he stopped when safe on the farther side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you are wasting your strength in labor here. Your journey will end with the closing day. You'll never again will pass this way. You've crossed this chasm, deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at eventide? The laborer lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said, there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm which has been naught to me, to that young man may pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. As an engineer by trade, I thought this poem was very appropriate. Senator, you have spent your personal, professional, and political life building bridges. This poem may speak to you biblically, morally, or it just may be an inspirational message about how we should strive to live our life to leave this world better than we found it. We cannot look around the state of South Carolina without appreciating the bridges that you have built. Bridges that welcome all social classes, races, and religions to this wonderful state. Bridges to unite people for a common good. Bridges to improve K through 12 education. Provide quality and affordable higher education to all South Carolinians. Senator Leatherman, you have provided the necessary facilities to educate our people while protecting families from rising cost of tuition. As we say at the Commission on Higher Education, your efforts create a knowledge-based economy, changing destinies for generations to come. Bridges to employment, you have promoted South Carolina and encouraged economic development. QVC, Honda, Johnson Controls, Otis Elevator, and of course Boeing are but a few examples of how you have created well-paying jobs for South Carolinians to allow them to realize their dream of providing a better life for their children. Importantly, building bridges right here in the Senate to do the people's business. And literally, building bridges and roads in this state to keep our families safe as they travel and enjoy the beauty that South Carolina has to offer. Unlike the gentleman in the poem, your journey has not come to an end. There are many bridges left to build. But Senator Leatherman, you need to know that we're extremely grateful for the bridges that you have built already. And through your efforts, you have drastically improved the quality of life for all of us that make South Carolina our home. Karen and I often talk about you at the fitness forum. And she says, "Hood, you sure love my daddy." And my response is, "I sure do." And then I follow by saying, he shows his love every day to the people he serves in this state through his tireless service. Senator Leatherman, my dear friend, on behalf of the people of South Carolina, we thank you.
Good afternoon. It's my distinct pleasure to be back in this Senate chamber. I have many fond memories of my time as chairman serving in this hallowed room. Much of those memories are with many of you as I look around here, including the gentleman we're here to honor today, Senator President Pro Tem Hugh Leatherman. Senator Leatherman, it's an honor to be here with you, your family, and all of your friends and your fellow public servants to unveil your portrait today. I'm sure if these walls could talk, they would tell many stories, for they have been witness to much over the decades of time. As we all know, this chamber is and has been a meeting ground for people and ideas. This floor has been a sounding board for many different voices. And through all those various voices, this remarkable and storied institution has remained a place of civility and collegiality. Even in the most heated moments, contentious debates, the members of this chamber never lost sight of the values that were institutionalized here so long ago. While serving in this chamber, friendships are made, character grows, and the state is served. The South Carolina Senate is a deliberative body with respect for differences and tolerance of dissent. As a center of consensus building, this chamber touches the lives of the people of South Carolina. This afternoon, these walls, this portrait, touch our hearts as we unveil the portrait of our dear friend and colleague, Senator Hugh Leatherman. Looking up at the portraits in this room, each portrayal is a painted biography. Art, unlike a photo, speaks to more than a moment in time. Each painting depicts the numerous life experiences that are worn into the faces of the people and the elements that have influenced the lives, characters, and careers of those hanging around this room. I'm certain Senator Leatherman's portrait will be no different. I have great confidence in this artist. Many of us who are lucky to share moments with him in this hallowed chamber have watched him grow and seen firsthand his ardent love for South Carolina, the South Carolina Senate, and its citizens. Senator Leatherman is, and he has been, a fierce supporter of efforts to move our state forward, and an equally fierce opponent of gridlock and ill-advised legislation that would take us backward. He is an avid advocate and a tireless worker who has championed economic development, education, transportation, just to name a few areas. Over his decades of service, he has used his good temperament, his knowledge, his capabilities, and his experience to help make this state grow and to take it to new and greater heights. Years ago, I was asked in an interview, what makes Senator Leatherman keep on expending his energies year after year? And I replied, he loves South Carolina. It's as basic as that. That is his hallmark. I witnessed his love of this state time and time again, weekdays and weekends. Sometimes I didn't care for that. I wanted to go jet skiing over the many years. For instance, I remember the Saturday morning, and this was after he had convened us at Rick Tapp's law office and got the Boeing meeting started. Senator Groom, Senator Campbell, you were there. He got us there. Well, I got a call from Senator Leatherman, and he said, I need to see you on a Saturday morning. I said, golly, because it was a warm Saturday, and Senator Groom's knows where I'll be out on the lake. But I sat down with the senator, and his mind in numbers and everything is like an accounting sheet. And we sat there trying to figure out the final figures. What were the benefits to Boeing of coming? And, Judge, we were figuring out the max that we could afford to put into that offer to make it happen. And those are figures I never can give you. So, it was on a Saturday morning. Then I remember the multiple phone calls from overseas the senator placed to me. At various times of the day, senators, a couple of times I told you, you know what time it is over here? And as he was working through the Boeing negotiations. And I remember the many meetings, calls, conferences, and the bold stands we had to make the new port and a at-port rail yard happen to serve South Carolina. And I was there when the mayor of North Charleston told us, never will I allow that at-rail port with an exit out of the north. And the senator looked at me and he said, I see a glimmer of hope in his eyes. So, I remember his counsel and support, along with Senator Malloy, in the lonely hours of the litigation that I had to undertake for the Senate as President Pro Tem to preserve the constitutional independence of this chamber. I remember his help to many citizens, business people, and fellow senators with challenges and needs from across the state over the years. I remember the late-night budget debates. No matter the hour, he was there at his desk, attentive to the process, and I could cast my eyes behind me at some younger ones and see him slumping. Through the weeks and months of witnessing his love of this state and this Senate, these weeks and months, they turned into years. The years turned into decades. But one thing remained constant through all of that time: his untiring efforts to help South Carolina. Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, and Senator, thank you for your long and outstanding service. Thank you for the many years you've given to our citizens. Thank you for making South Carolina a better place. Thank you for all that you have done. I look over here and see my colleague, Dr. Fred Carter. You've been a pivot for both of us in our life. We know all you've done. It's not just for us, it's for all kind of people. Senator, I've witnessed your assistance, extensive expertise, and your honest counsel over the years. I long ago came to regard you not only as a colleague, but as a valued friend. I'm so grateful to you for our friendship and the privilege to have served with you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are defined by what we build up, not by what we tear down. On behalf of the great citizens of this state, I extend our deepest appreciation to you for the innumerable contributions that you have made to build us up here in South Carolina. With the unveiling and hanging of this portrait, let these walls, from the architecture to the adornments, to the portraits, to the memories, speak to the people of this and another day, reminding those who come here as visitors, as guests, and as lawmakers, that this is a place where respect, process, tolerance, inclusion, collegiality, service, and love of state together comprise the best of public service. The faces that you see on these walls here are representatives. They're very representative of the many who have served here and will continue to serve here in this august body, and of the many who have given their time and talent to serve the people of this great state. May all who gaze upon your portrait, Senator, be reminded that in service, in love of the state, and in the walls of this institution, that progress is always possible. And finally, may all the images here representing a continuum of time become an unbroken reminder to those who serve here that through discussions, deliberations, and decisions, our future will always be bright. Once again, Senator, thank you. Thank you for your long and wonderful service. Congratulations on a job well done. Our state is better because of you. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce, you've been called a genius and everything, and you are, the superb artist of Senator Leatherman's portrait, John Seibels Walker. John is widely respected, very widely respected, as one of America's foremost classically trained artists. His work is so real, but so perfected in his artistic license and ability to encompass many stories and feelings in one image. His mastery of figure drawing and his use of colors and lights spectacularly set his portraits apart. In fact, if you're the subject of his portrait, he studies you. He spends time with you. He gets to know you completely. You go and spend time with him and his wife. You break bread with them and you talk. And sometimes, as we say, I would say, good Anglo-Catholic punch is served. And then, with all of that great knowledge, he paints in classical realism masterful portraits. Ladies and gentlemen, the talented and famous John Seibels Walker.
In addition to the artists, I'm going to ask you to say a few remarks in a moment, but I want to invite forward Miss Jean and your two beautiful granddaughters whose dresses are picture perfect and not a speck on them. And we will have the unveiling at Jean's command.
Greetings, everyone. I'm always deeply humbled to speak at such occasions, and after such accomplished individuals and orators, reminding me that I probably chose very wisely to speak with but a brush and paint as an artist. That said, I would like to share a bit about the portrait process. But first, I would like to thank the Clerk of the Senate and Sergeant at Arms for their assistance as we staged the portrait here at the bench with the need to temporarily remove a good bit of modern technology. I would also like to thank Hugh Leatherman and the Senator's assistant, Quentin Hawkins, for their preparations of materials and patient assistance during the sitting. Creating a portrait such as this is a bit like putting a puzzle together, and we worked as a team to make all of the pieces fit. During my first meeting with Senator Leatherman, he described to me his wish for a portrait that could tell his unique story and represent his steadfast desire over his many years as a public servant to leave the state of South Carolina in a better place. Our conversation frequently turned to his background as a builder, not only in the concrete and construction industries, but also as a builder of relationships. He struck me as eternally optimistic about the state's future, where the words of the state motto came to mind, Dum spiro spero, while I breathe, I hope. One will find represented in the portrait 2 examples of these skills and this optimism put to work. The first is in the rendering held in his right hand of the new Ports Authority terminal in Charleston, and the second is a model of a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, representing his critical role in the Boeing Aircraft Company, selecting South Carolina for their new state-of-the-art assembly plant as they also move toward the future. From an artistic point of view, I was blessed with these choices. The strong blue notes in each of these still life elements are strategically placed in a way so as to balance each other in the painting, and they also perfectly reference the same strong blue note seen in the portrait of Lieutenant Governor Glenn McConnell, alongside which this portrait will hang. As an admirer of Grand Manner and other historical portraits, I depicted Senator Leatherman in a classic statesmanlike pose while standing in front of the raised bench with the gavel used to call to order the Senate. This represents his position of leadership and role as President pro tempore. As he reaches out, presenting the rendering of the new Ports Authority terminal to the Senate and to the viewer in the foreground, this gesture leads the viewer's eye right into the painting. These choices also allowed for me, as an artist, to correctly position the viewer, looking up towards the subject, which is especially important for the elevated position in the Senate gallery where this painting will hang. Of special significance in the painting is the hilt of the official sword of state, a symbol for the Senate of South Carolina, placed in its cradle on the Senate rostrum, thereby signifying that the Senate is in session. You will also find depicted in the portrait the Senator's study Bible from his office desk, his tie embroidered with the palmetto tree and crescent symbols from the state flag, and his lapel pin showing the letters F and M intertwined, honoring his relationship with Francis Marion University. And finally, the cornerstone of the portrait is depicted in the lower left. Part of the official seal of the Senate is shown carved in wood with the Latin words Dum spiro spero, while I breathe, I hope. I would like to add to that a motto in Latin that I often reflect upon and use as a traditional portraitist. Ars longa, vita brevis. Art is long, life is short. May this portrait faithfully honor for generations to come the many years of public service that Senator Leatherman has given and continues to give to the state of South Carolina. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. What a fabulous job, John Seibels, Walker, you did on this portrait. Terrific job. Thank you for what you did. You've heard today from a group of great people. I appreciate the kind words of each and every one of those. I'm truly humbled to think that the portrait will soon be added to the history of these walls. Highlighted in that history is the legacy of those who have worked here. History will show that previous President Pro Tems, John Drummond on the wall to my left, and Glenn McConnell up high over here on the right are models of exceptional leadership. As time marches on, I believe posterity's judgment will rank them among the greatest of their generations. And our dear friend J. Vern Smith on that wall behind me was a true senator's senator, a man whose mind and heart was as large as his huge frame, and he was huge. I look to these three every day as I walk past our famous railing and take my seat in this historic chamber. Now, there are other giants of the past with us here today. We look over here and we see Senator Emmett Dennis. Over here we see Senator Marion Gressett. These transitional leaders of South Carolina taught me the ways of the Senate. They led through times of greatness and struggle in our state. To a young, bright-eyed, know-it-all from the PD, they could dispense wisdom and discipline with ease. Oftentimes, their thumbs would fall a little heavy on the discipline side of that. Our modern Senate is no less transitional. The leaders of today face a test of strength and will that is pushed by technology, transparency, and brash young senators who are ready to shake up the world. But make no mistake, I applaud and support these young senators. The men and women who serve today deserve no less than the support of those of us who have labored at these desks for many years. Prophet Job asked the question, is not wisdom found among the aged? But what good is that wisdom if it's not used to bolster the young? Senator Dennis and Senator Gressett taught a new generation of senators to respect and appreciate this body. Senator Setzler, elected in 1976, and those from my class 1980, Phil Levinas, Alex McCauley, Glenn McConnell, Tommy Moore, Harvey Peeler, Arthur Ravenel, Nick Theodore, always worked to reach a bar that was set high. This Senate deserves no less than that. There's no better example than what is happening here today. Senators often battle in this chamber. Rifts form and alliances are created. Since Peeler and I are no different. Many times we have fought together. Many times we have simply fought. Without his love and respect for our Senate, today's ceremony would not happen. For that, Senator Peeler, although you're not with us, I will be forever grateful. There are many others that should be thanked today as well. One always stands above the rest, my beautiful wife, Jean. Nothing in my world happens without you. I will close with this. At his portrait unveiling, Senator McConnell talked about the difference between an artist portrait and a simple photograph. The photograph, he said, simply captures a moment, whereas an artist portrait speaks to the future. It's my hope that future generations of senators view this portrait and see a man from humble beginnings who worked hard and only for the betterment of our great state. Thank you all for coming, and God bless you, and I appreciate everyone who's here on this wonderful day. Thank you so much.